Obviously, you are going to have to analyze some sedentary people for your task. So I'm going to actually use some of my slides from nutrition, which refer to the athlete's needs analysis, and we're going to try and give you a little whistle-stop tour on how you're going to be able to work with your clients, how you're going to work out what kind of calories they need, and then it will be up to you to put those into action, be able to track them with your client, and also be able to monitor what kind of macronutrients they need to eat. So if we look through, we're going to do a little bit on a needs assessment, calculating their BMR or their basal metabolic rate, and then a little bit on actually programming their requirement. So if you look on the slide there, you'll see that depending on the different background, different sport, their requirements of macronutrients are going to be quite substantially different. My recommendation was that you use a sedentary person, so probably on this first person here, rather than considering you're going to be working with Rafael Nadal. Don't get your hopes up. But this will obviously have an impact on what kind of recommendations you put in place. Now, it's really, really key that you do the research, it's independent research, to pick up the ideas and the understanding from the nutrition module. So we have looked at carbohydrate, protein and fat, so please do head over there if you've got any questions at all. We're really going to be focusing on energy balance. So your energy balance is actually made of a few different formulas, but the main component is this, the basal metabolic rate, or BMR. This is the amount of energy the body requires to survive in almost a comatose state, really. So there's no energy expenditure coming from food digestion, so that's thermic effect of food. There's no energy expenditure from exercise. There is literally nothing going on other than just being in existence and your body surviving in a relatively healthy state. Now, we use a couple of different formulas, such as the Schofield, or there is our preferred formula, which is the most industry standard, which is the Harris-Benedict formula. It is based on your participant, or in this case your client's height, weight, age and gender, so you must make sure you take those measurements. Do not rely on them providing them for you, because they won't be accurate, they won't be recent. Now, this formula doesn't really take into account those people who are really muscular or those people who are quite obese, so there will be a variance there if you work with those populations, but for the majority of people it's a great starting point. Now, energy balance is basically what's needed to have a zero weight gain or weight loss, and therefore weight maintenance. What we'll find out is that if you consume more than your BMR, and more than you expend in your daily life, and more than you expend in your energy, so this is now your total energy expenditure, you will gain weight. This is called a positive energy balance, meaning you have a surplus amount of calories, which will be stored as fat most likely. Or if you are negative in your energy balance, so you're basically burning more energy than you're consuming, you will lose weight. It's a very, very simple method, and this is what you will need to calculate for your participant. I keep saying that, it should be your client. So, in front of you, you'll see we have a formula for women and a formula for men. It's really important that you choose the correct formula when you're working with your clients, and that isn't a spelling mistake. It is 655 for women and 66 for men. If you use your phone for this, you can just turn your phone calculator so it's horizontal. Get that in on screen. So it's horizontal, it's landscape, and then you'll be able to input the brackets as well. Once you've calculated that, you will get a figure. That is your basal metabolic rate. That means how many calories that person uses to live. Okay, it does not take into account what their lifestyle's like. So if they have a job where they're sitting down, they have a very low activity level score, a PAL score. Or if they're a labourer, so on a building site, they're going to have a very high PAL score, so something like 1.6 and above. Those are these things here, this daily activity factors. In order to calculate these, we take our BMR score, so what you've worked out on this previous slide, and then we times it by one of these figures. The most common mistake here is that you will overestimate how active someone is. So as a student, you are pretty much sedentary, okay? Whereas, that's interesting, I put sedentary there, I need to change that. You're pretty much doing nothing whilst you're sat down for the majority of the day, then you go home and study because you're reading all those journal articles that you're promising me that you are reading. Whereas someone, like I've said already, a labourer, I mean, this is a labourer who's working extremely long days, so over 12 hours a day. They've got a score of 1.8 to 2. That's really high, and that's unlikely. As you know, I walk around the classroom constantly, and I also work as a coach, so I'm on my feet pretty much all the day. So I would probably class myself as a 1.4. I wouldn't go any above that, though, because I simply do not move enough. If you get this calculation wrong, you're basically prescribing your client to eat more food to maintain their weight, and you will not get the results with your client. Now, once you have worked out all of this information, you will then sometimes choose to calculate how many calories they're burning in different activities. Now, I've got this little link up for you there. That might help you out if you take a note of that. Okay, and that will help you characterize what your client does on a daily basis, because we've got our BMR, then we've added our daily activity factor, and that's how many calories they're burning throughout the day now. Any exercise we can add on top of that. Now, if your client's goal is to lose weight, then we're going to want something called a negative calorie balance, so a negative energy balance, should I say, which is a calorie deficit. So they're going to eat, they're going to have a lower intake of energy than what they're burning. We're going to aim for anything between 300 and 500 calories, okay? That's critical to get some kind of results. If they can do that every single day, then you might even find that in the 2 weeks that you work with them, they'll have lost some weight. That would be really good as well. Now, you'll need to consider where they get their macronutrients from. Now, if they're a sedentary person, it's most likely that they're not really going to need a very high amount of carbohydrate. So you might put the carbohydrate last, so it'll be protein, fat, and then carbohydrate. And it's really important that you calculate where they should be getting their protein from, give them some advice, build it into their program about what kind of sources of protein, what kind of sources of carbohydrate, and what kind of sources of fat. Give them some guidance. Use our lectures from our individual sessions on those topics in nutrition. Now, I'm going to leave these slide up for BMR there because there's lots of information I don't think you really need to see on screen. But I have got a few things that we need to consider. So you're going to build this plan for them. You're going to look at recommended daily amounts from the government guidelines, from our classes. There are obviously going to be some debates over whether the government guidelines are right. You know how I feel about that. How are you going to incorporate into that day? So perhaps on a weekend they're going to want to eat something naughty, so you're going to allow them to do that? Are you going to build in a little bit more of a calorie deficit Monday to Friday, and then on Saturday they can eat a little bit more naughty food as such? How are you going to basically make sure that they follow the program? So that might be linking into giving them an easier time on the weekend. It might be some kind of a reward system, but I want you to consider that. What is really important is how are you going to motivate your client? Are you going to talk about the health benefits? Are there things that they can look forward to? Are you going to remind them of a particular event that they wanted to get in shape for? Maybe there's a wedding coming up, maybe it's a holiday. And it might even be necessary for you to check in with them. see what their progress is like, see if they need some support at certain times. Say on a Wednesday when they know they've already had 2 hard days at work, another day at work, and then, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe that's the day you always check in on them. You send them a little message and see what you can do to support them. Monitoring their progress. I think I had a little slide up there at some point. Yeah, so we could use that food diary thing. It depends on how interested the client really is. If you can try and get some kind of food diary or MyFitnessPal food diary, that will really support you. The benefits of MyFitnessPal is it will give you the calories, the protein, carbohydrate and fat that they're consuming. This will no doubt tell you whether they're on target, whether they're meeting what you think they should be meeting. I probably wouldn't recommend calipers because that's going to be quite invasive and you're not at that skill level yet to really handle calipers, I wouldn't have thought. Bioimpedance, so if you've got some bioimpedance scales, that might give you some form of measurement, which would be nice to see. But the main things for me are making sure that you put them on the correct calories, that you outline what their sources of macronutrients are, what kind of foods that you want to see them eating, how you're going to make sure that they don't lapse motivation, and then consider the barriers. You know, are there going to be nights out which are going to be difficult? How do they make a healthy choice in a restaurant? What other barriers might they have? If they're working late, can you encourage them to make some food beforehand at home the night before, etc.? Okay, it's really important that you consider these things, because remember, all of these points are in your actual physical activity, lifestyle and wellbeing assessment number 2. Okay, I am available on my email as normal, and I just want you really to consider those key points and use the slides that we've already done in nutrition to build that idea. All right, thank you very much, guys.